Friends, welcome. Hello, everyone. Hi, Sounds True friends. Welcome to this special webinar on the power of self-compassion. I'm here with Sounds True friends, Dr. Chris Germer and Dr. Kristin Neff. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Hi, Tami. Great to be here.
I think of both of you as torch bearers of self-compassion, torch bearers being a metaphor that is sometimes used traditionally in meditative traditions for people who are carrying a flame out in the culture with other people. You've both poured yourself out with self-compassion as a focus of your professional life, bringing your academic training and your big hearts to the topic. So I just want to begin by thanking you for the service that you're performing for all of us. Thank you. I want to tell our listeners a little bit more about both of you, and then we're going to get right into it. Dr. Kristin Neff is one of the world's most influential research psychologists, conducting the first empirical studies on self-compassion now 2 decades ago. Is that about the right timing? Yep, 2 decades ago. She's the author of several groundbreaking books on the topic of self-compassion, including the book Self-Compassion, The Proven Power of Being Kind to Yourself, and a book on fierce self-compassion, how women can harness kindness to speak up, claim their power, and thrive. And Kristin and Dr. Chris Germer work together as teaching partners. Let me tell you a little bit about Chris. He's a clinical psychologist, a lecturer on psychiatry at Harvard Medical School, and he's the author of the book, The Mindful Path to Self-Compassion. And right here at the start, I want to talk more about the new course that the two of you offer through Sounds True, a course that we created several years ago that we're currently in the midst of offering. You've also created this 5-part video teaching series together, the Self-Compassion Challenge, which many of the people who are joining us have already watched. Everyone has access to. It's a great little 5-part teaching series. Each part gives you a practice. But right here at the start, I want to say a little bit more about the course. But tell us, how did the two of you meet and start teaching together? How did that happen?
Well, I'll start. So basically, it was 2008, and Mind and Life, which was an organization largely funded by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, held the first silent meditation retreat, 7-day silent meditation retreat for scientists. And I was really excited, and Chris was excited. I didn't know him at that point. And I get an email out of the blue saying, Kristin, I'm a big fan of your research. This retreat, I saw you're going to it. Do you need a ride? I live nearby. And I said, sure. I didn't know who he was, but I accepted first. And then I Googled him, and I found out, that he'd done all this work in bringing meditation to psychotherapy. So we went on the retreat, and it was a wonderful experience. And then at some point on the ride home, Chris turned to me and said, do you want to take over from here, Chris?
Well, yeah. I mean, so at the time, most of the research was correlational, which means we were just looking at kind of when somebody is self-compassionate, what is the impact on their lives? But the thought occurred to me as a clinician that, what would happen if people actually learn self-compassion?
Yeah.
Could this be, first of all, could it be taught? And then what would the outcome be? And so I said to Kristin, hey, you should really, create a training program.
And I said, are you crazy? I'm an academic. And meanwhile, Chris had done a lot of work, teaching mindfulness to clinicians. And I said, Chris, you should really create a training program to teach people self-compassion. And so there was a moment, there's a moment in the car where we kind of looked at each other like, should we? And then the idea to create the mindful self-compassion program was born. And that started it all.
It shows you the alchemy of people coming together in a conversation like that, what can be born.
That's right.
Yeah. And now here you've been working together as colleagues, training people in mindful self-compassion in all different kinds of environments, and with Sounds True, have created an 8-part video course. It's over 8 hours of teaching on the power of self-compassion. The course begins on March 23rd, and there are Q&A sessions with Kristin and Chris that are part of the training, along with access to monthly mentoring. And if you're interested, if you're watching this on the live stream, you can just click the Learn More button and you'll learn more about the course. If you're watching this on YouTube, hi, YouTube friend, you can find a link in the show description. And if you're joining us here on Sounds True 1, then there's a link in the chat where you can learn more about the course. And we're offering the course right now at a 50% discount for people who register before the start date on March 23rd. And if you're a Sounds True 1 member, you also get your Sounds True 1 member 20% discount. And for those of you who are listening and are thinking, what's Sounds True 1? It's our new community platform. And if you go to join.soundstrue.com, you can learn more about this monthly membership platform that is such an exciting evolution of how we're bringing forth community events and regular teachings at Sounds True. So again, the course begins on March 23rd, and we'd love to have you join us. All right, Kristin, Chris, here's what I'd love to know. When you decided to start teaching together, what would you say was the original core heart motivation? This is what was happening inside my heart. This is what I saw could be possible.
Well, maybe I'll start, and I think we're probably pretty similar. I mean, for me, I did research self-compassion, but it started as a personal practice. I certainly didn't invent the idea. I actually learned about self-compassion when I learned mindfulness meditation at a Thich Nhat Hanh Sangha. So Thich Nhat Hanh, beautiful man, was one of the teachers who talked the most about self-compassion. And so for me, it actually started as a practice before I decided to research it. So the idea of finding a way to help other people in a secular context, I mean, not everyone's Buddhist. I didn't want it to be about you have to learn Buddhism to learn self-compassion. The idea that we could teach anyone kind of the skill of self-compassion, the resource of self-compassion, and that it could change their lives in a way it similarly transformed mine, was just so exciting.
Yeah, I can perhaps echo that. You know, same thing for me. My experience of self-compassion was that it basically healed 20 years of public speaking anxiety, and it changed my life, not just in that respect, but just generally feeling afterwards that I could show up more fully in life, just as I was, warts and all, imperfections. It was just, I don't know, it was just an idea which actually could be transformed into an experience. And then also, because I was coming from the, contemplative mindfulness practice tradition, something that can be actually trained. So I just thought, whoa, this is something I think that could help a lot of people. And I was just thrilled that it clicked with Kristin because, frankly, doing things together is not only more fun, but also, more productive.
Yeah, better. We think better together than either of us does
together,
alone.
Yeah. we've had a lot of these, but we always discover that more beautiful stuff comes out when we hash it out. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, in the 5-part free video series on the challenge, the self-compassion challenge, 5 days, you introduced the 3 central elements of self-compassion. And I wanted to know more, and I think people would love to know, how did you come up with these 3 elements as being the critical foundational elements of practicing self-compassion?
Right. Okay. So this was, I had been practicing self-compassion since 95, and I decided I wanted to research it. It was early 2000s. And I knew I had to come up with a really clear theoretical model of self-compassion, because the idea was I was going to create a scale to measure it so that we could see if it was associated with more well-being outcomes. So the first one was kind of obvious, being kind, warm, supportive, caring towards yourself, as opposed to harshly judgmental. The other two are perhaps not so obvious, but came about in terms of how I learned about self-compassion. I realized that you needed mindfulness. In addition to kindness, you needed mindfulness to have self-compassion. In other words, you needed to be able to turn toward and be with your suffering or your difficult thoughts or feelings or emotions in a balanced way, right? If you ignored it, you couldn't give yourself compassion. It's like you're just shutting yourself out. But similarly, if you were lost in it, you're lost in the thoughts and emotions, you couldn't give yourself compassion. So I knew you needed to be mindful of your suffering, give yourself kindness. And then it occurred to me, I was reading Jack Kornfield's book, A Path with Heart. And he has this great section on the difference between compassion and pity. And the difference between compassion and pity is other people, right? Pity is either self-pity is poor me, or pitying someone is looking down on them. Compassion is inherently connected, recognizing that we're all human beings doing the best we can. And then, so that's when I realized that you actually had to have that third element, which I call common humanity. You can also think of it as interconnectedness. And it's like a three-legged stool. You need all three legs for this to be a really stable and healthy mindset.
Okay, so these three elements came really from your own introspection, your own inner
Yes.
work. What did the research show you about self-compassion being something that could be trained, this notion that we can learn self-compassion?
Yeah, so at first, as Chris said, it was mainly correlational research. I created a scale to measure it, and the higher you scored on the scale, the better mental health outcomes you had. The first study of actually a self-compassion intervention was one Chris and I did together. It was published in 2013 on the Mindful Self-Compassion Program. Chris, do you want to summarize the results of it? You know that as well as I do. He was co-author.
Yeah, but also perhaps in response to Tami's question, we had known before we started that the benefits of mindfulness training were dose dependent. In other words, the more you practice, the more you benefit. And so with that inspiration, we went ahead and did this training. And yeah, so we found that when people take the mindful self-compassion training, they have less stress, less anxiety, less depression, more life satisfaction, increased happiness and well-being.
Compassion for others, which is interesting.
Compassion for others, that's a key one. Many people are afraid because there's the word self and self-compassion. It's going to be like selfishness training. We actually discovered selflessness training, So anyhow, so that was initial inspiration. And now there have been a lot of studies on MSC in particular, adaptations of MSC, and like 5,000 articles in the academic literature on self-compassion.
Amazing.